What's up, Chris? It's James Adair, and we're coming at you once again. This may be our 10th episode or something.
This is 11.
11th episode. Man, congratulations.
Yeah, to you. Yes, sir. 11 episodes. I like it.
11 episodes of the Equity Accelerator podcast, where you and I have a conversation to add value to our real estate community, to add value to the mortgage community, and to anybody who owns a house or wants to add equity to any aspect of their life. But we usually start with real estate. And again, my name is James Adair. I'm with the Sierra Pacific Mortgage PDX Home Loan team. I can be found at pdxhomeloan.com. We'll get to that at the end, I'm sure.
Yes.
And Chris, you are my real estate coach, my guru, my podcast producer, and my bud.
Oh my gosh, so, it's a one-stop shop right here.
Yeah, you cover a lot of bases for me, so I always appreciate it.
I always love our talks.
Yeah, and so today we were having a quick conversation to discuss what episode 11 would be all about, and I was jazzed about I was 5 minutes late to our session today because I was on the phone with an old friend who's a real estate agent.
Yep.
And we were talking about the idea that we're both seasoned professionals at this point. This is my 16th year in the business. And I think she's at least 10 years, maybe the same as me. She's been at it a while and very experienced and good agent. But we talked about how the people we're talking to are not first-time homebuyers anymore, even though I still love working with first-time homebuyers. And I do have a handful of first-time homebuyers always kind of in the pipeline. But when we first started, maybe for the first 5 or 6 years, it was just almost like all I did was first-time homebuyers. And the conversation I'm having now with people who are looking to buy their second house, third, fourth house is totally different. Yeah. And we're no longer selling home ownership to these people. They already own home ownership.
Right. Yeah.
So now we're just selling some sort of refined experience. Sometimes it's like, I got to get into the school district, or I got to get an extra bathroom because my daughters are teenagers now and they need their own bathroom. This is ridiculous. Yeah. That's why people move now, not because it's like, oh my gosh, so this huge financial seismic shift is going to be happening. It's something smaller. So that type of buyer is moving a lot slower. It's a lot more complicated for them to buy that next house. And, oftentimes that person has a mortgage. If they've gotten it in the last, 5 to 8 years, that mortgage rate is probably pretty low, probably below 4%.
Right.
And to get the next house, they have to extinguish that mortgage and fire up a new one at today's rates, which are in the 4s and maybe 4.5, something in that territory. So their rate, and that's like going from 3.5 to 4.5 is approximately a 20% increase in cost of funds.
Yeah, you'll feel that.
You will feel that. Not only that, but to get to the next level of your house, probably are added. You're going from I owe $300,000 on this house to now I owe $400,000. I mean, we're coming at you from Portland, Oregon. So if you're listening to this in Oklahoma or Nebraska or something, that's kind of how it's going out here. The average sale price is in the low 300s, mid 300s in this marketplace, maybe even higher.
Wow.
So that is an area of resistance for buyers. And I explained to her, hey, let me talk to these people and I can put them through a conversation that I call liability management. So not many people know this. I haven't done a good job of putting it on my business card or anything, but I have a credential.
We're going to do it right now.
Okay.
Here goes.
Here goes. Yeah.
What listening? Is it? Okay, yeah. If you're listening, this is the announcement.
All right. Turn it up. This is about to happen.
You're on notice.
Yeah. So I took a class a couple years ago now, and it's a 12-hour credential. Realtors have these credentials, the GRE and the certified negotiating.
CRS and
the, I don't even know what they are. I don't know. Other realtors know what they are. I don't know what they are, but anyway, it just means they took a class and they have a special education around a certain thing. So I have that in the mortgage space. It's a CLA. I'm a certified liability advisor. So it's and it was a really, really impactful course where we learned all about the tax code in real estate. We learned all about investing, real estate, how to measure real estate investments, but also how to integrate your real estate and your debts into a larger financial plan.
Right.
It's a different way to look at your dollars every month as they come in. You could pay, a lot of people want to pay extra on their mortgage. And you have to understand a few things before you really are making those decisions. And a lot of people don't even realize they're making these decisions, but they are making financial decisions every month with where they put their dollars. Right. But to go back to this conversation I had with this real estate agent talking about what we call a move up buyer, a buyer who already has a house to sell.
Yeah.
And they're kind of looking at, okay, the next purchase, I'm borrowing this much more and the rate's going to be higher. I just wanted another bathroom and now it's going to cost me $800 a month more. Is it worth it? And this buyer their motivations are different and they're more, like I said, more complicated. So, but I have seen in a lot of circumstances that buyer, if they have a car payment, if they have other debts, if they have a student loan, certainly they have plenty of equity in today's Portland, Oregon market. But if we look at selling their house and taking some of the equity they free up, and then most people just assume that they're going to put it all down on the next house and borrow as little as possible. And that's an option, obviously, always an option. But there can be huge advantages to taking the equity that you free up and paying off or down other debts to manage your cash flow,
right?
In a way. So So with the certified liability advising kind of prism, this move up buyer, in some cases, we can look at restructuring their equity to pay off other debts, maybe put a little bit less down on the next purchase. Yeah. So they're swapping out debt X, Y, and Z, all for tax advantaged mortgage debt.
Right.
And then say, instead of $800 a month more, maybe you could buy that next house and it's only $100 a month more, right? If we structure things differently.
That includes both the interest rate that is higher and the purchase price, which is higher, but you'd only be paying maybe, say, for example, $100 more in your payment instead of $800 more.
Exactly. Yeah. For example, that's an example of someone I spoke with recently, and and it really it lowered the barrier for them to make that next move, right?
I think there's a lot of people sitting in their house who are like, I would move, but I'm afraid of the 4.5%, or I'm afraid of whatever the interest rate is. And they're not thinking about it from a liability. How did you call it? What's the term?
Yeah.
Liability management.
Liability management. Exactly. They're not thinking about it from that perspective. And then another thing is that I subscribe to an information service where I get a daily update from a mortgage-backed security, a mortgage bond prognosticator, an expert, and every day, and it's for the mortgage industry, all the best loan originators in the country are subscribing to this service. This guy is really on the money. And every day he says, this is what's happening in the mortgage-backed security market. Should you lock? Should you float? What are we paying attention to today?
Right.
Or next week that's going to influence the cost of mortgages for our clients. I heard him speak a couple months ago, and he's convinced that the United States is going to have a recession at some point, maybe 2020 or 2021, at which point rates are going to come down again. So another thing to consider is that, going from 3.5 to 4.5 is painful. I don't want to minimize that, but it's not like the end of the world. That's not the loan you're going to be in forever. Right.
Yeah.
I think there's a very high chance that people in the United States will get another opportunity in the next 2, 3, 4 years to refinance again at a 3.8, 3.7 rate. It's going to happen again. It's going to, I think for sure.
What's been the appreciation of the Portland market in general? And then do you think that's still going to keep going up?
It's been strong. It's been decelerating a little bit, but I do think it's going to keep going up. We saw
it's like 10%, 5%.
It's in between, I think, and there are different pockets where some are 10 and some are 5 across the metro area. I mean, there's probably within the city of Portland, I think there's probably a dozen discrete like market dynamics happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But overall, it's probably in the 7% average range.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of shooting from the hip on that a little bit, but I think the closer in properties probably appreciate a little higher.
Yeah.
And the ones out on the margins appreciated maybe a little slower.
I ask because I feel like part of, like we think about like 3.5% to 4.5% in interest rate, but we don't think about the amount of appreciation of the property itself. Like, ultimately the net worth or the equity, if you want, wink, wink, the equity acceleration that can happen when you move up. Like 5% appreciation on a $400,000 house is more than 5% appreciation on a $300,000 house in equity.
Yeah, exactly. You're leveraging you're moving upstream, and you're leveraging a higher asset.
Can I play with those numbers for just a second? Since you're the smart one, can I play with those and you tell me if this?
I have my calculator right out of frame. I have.
I don't know.
I have my HP. That's financial calculator.
That's too much. That hurts my brain. But my thought is like, if I go from like a 5% appreciation on 100,000 be 5,000.
Yes.
So on $300,000, that's 15 grand. On a $400,000 property, it's 20 grand. So it's an additional $5,000, right?
Yeah.
That if the market continues to appreciate at 5% and you, the homeowner, want to move up from 300,000 to 400,000,
right.
And the market's appreciating at 5%. And James, because of his liability management, his CLA certification, could allow you somehow to have the monthly payment of your mortgage only be $100 more.
Right.
Over the course of the next year, $100 more for that
For
house.
example.
Hypothetically speaking, we'll make it hypothetical.
Right.
I just want to play with the numbers. That's my point, right? Like, that my monthly payment would be an additional $1,200 a year,
right?
$100 a month,
right?
But my appreciation was $5,000, so I actually came out ahead $4,800. 40.
Yeah, I mean, in most cases, when you go up market, it costs you more. You're borrowing more, and it just costs you more, even at the same rate. It costs you more.
Yeah.
Sometimes when there are opportunities to restructure other debts. Yeah. But I got to tell you, a lot of my clients don't have a lot of other debts. I mean, they're fortunate to be running a pretty tight ship. And in that case, there's not much you can do. If you don't have any debt, there's not a lot of liabilities to manage.
Yep.
So that does happen sometimes, and I don't want to exclude that from. But you touched on some other parts of liability management, which is leverage, right? You're getting a different asset that's appreciating more rapidly. The same rate on a more expensive asset is going to get you a different return. And at some point that tapers off. I mean, I think another area is that, the marketplace for a $400,000 house is totally different than the marketplace for an $800,000 house. Totally different.
Yeah, good point. Mm-hmm.
Slower, there's fewer buyers. Mm-hmm. There's different trigger points for, what's meaningful to that crowd versus the other crowd. So, but leverage is a huge area of opportunity. And leverage is we define leverage as controlling something large with something small. So that's leverage is basically your down payment. Anytime you're borrowing money to acquire something, you're experiencing leverage. Mm-hmm. So if you bought something with all cash, you have zero leverage, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people feel like they have, it's safer to do that, but I think counterintuitively, there is some safety. There's more safety in borrowing because you keep cash on the sidelines. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people, they borrow because they have to. This is a CLA class concept, being a debtor versus a creditor. Someone who borrows money because they have to is a debtor, and someone who borrows money because it's to their financial advantage, we define that person as a creditor. So they're borrowing money because the borrowed money allows them to create more wealth.
Yeah, right. Could you gamify that? I'd like to maybe you could trademark that. I don't know. It sounds gamification right there. Like,
it's definitely trademarked. It's definitely trademarked. Todd Ballinger, if you're listening, it's trademarked.
There you go, Todd. Thank you. That's really good. Listen, The part about this I like is that this is like, I think when you and I are talking about the show, what is the Equity Accelerator? I feel like this is part of that conversation, is how are you able to accelerate equity in your home specifically, in other areas of life. But I think to do that, it requires looking out at different angles of this conversation, which is what we're doing in this particular episode.
There's a lot that goes into your ultimate financial outcome in real estate, and how much you put down, how you structure the loan, how it integrates with your taxes, how it creates opportunities for other cash you could have put down and you put it somewhere else that's leveraged, that's liquid. It affects your liquidity. Liquidity is just your access to the money, right?
Yep.
And home equity is not that liquid. How safe is the money? Like if you bought a house for $400,000, all cash, and it was all the money you had in the world, you're like, boom, I got a piece of real estate. I love it. I'm living here. I don't have a payment. I'm doing great. What if the market goes down? And when the market goes down, it's not like, it's not easy to imagine it coming back up. It's like it's sort of like, I mean, you're in the Northwest.
Yep.
It's like with the weather, like when it's cold in the wintertime, when it's cold, you're just bundled up.
I had that thought this morning.
You're like, man,
is it ever
it's just
gonna
always
get warm?
cold. I'm always cold.
I'm
and
cold
I can't
right now.
Imagine what it's going to be like. You just can't even remember what it's like to be like in a
wear
flip-flops.
shorts. Yeah.
And then when in the summertime, you're just like, this is great. It's always sunny and nice out here, right? So it's 6 months on, 6 months off. It's like that. And when the market goes down, let's say you're all cash buyer, and how stressful is it to be like, wow, I think this house might only be worth $280,000. I just lost $120,000 of equity.
Because you didn't have leverage, because you weren't leveraged.
You weren't leveraged. What if you put, if you put 20% down on that $400,000 house, that's $80,000. And now you still have $320,000 cash on the sidelines. Right. And the market goes down. There may be an opportunity to put that money into into a buying opportunity in some stocks, something like that. But also you just have the cash. Like if the market goes down, you could be like, well, I have this house and I have cash and I have a mortgage payment.
Right.
But it's more sustainable, and I think it's safer, right? I would argue it's arguably safer to be in that position than it is to be
absolutely
all tied up into that real estate, because that cash becomes it's your net worth neutral, because it's like you have the real estate asset and the cash. Yeah. If you bought it all cash, I'm getting verbal knots here, but.
That's not trademarked. I don't.
If you're all cash and you don't have a mortgage on that $400,000 house, and the market goes down, maybe you'd want to refinance it. Maybe your credit's off. Maybe you've lost your job. Maybe you've become injured and you can't work. I mean, there's all kinds of issues that might prevent you from being able to finance that property in the future. And then you'd have to sell, and then you'd definitely be taking a loss if you have to sell to free up that cash at the worst possible time. But if you'd leveraged it properly on the front end, you have more options.
Yeah, for sure. I like that.
So the first three priorities of liability management, of the liability management conversation when talking about a mortgage decision, is safety, liquidity, rate of return. Those are the three. Those are the three key concepts. And we kind of use that as a prism to say, well, how safe is it? And it's not up to me to decide. Right. I'm just there to kind of guide the conversation. It means something different to everybody. So
you're there to ask the right questions. I think
I'm there to ask the right questions and frame the conversation in a way that I think is more impactful. But it's really like the outcome is totally dependent on the end user. It's not my mortgage, it's not my real estate, right? This is your life. Yeah. But a lot of people make these decisions without understanding how it impacts them in the deeper ways.
That's what I wanted to point to. It's just like, that you have a CLA certification, that you can talk through liability management. Whereas a lot of lenders, let's just say it, let's just put this out there. Like a lot of lenders don't have that conversation. It's not about the full picture financially. It's about, can I get you the loan? Can my underwriters write it? Can we approve?
Yeah.
Can we give you a letter of loan commitment? Versus when you're working with somebody who has the bigger conversation to ask you the right questions, then we can actually create a strategy that works, right? That's the whole point of this.
And so, and that kind of goes back to some of the things we were talking about earlier, where we're just like, how do I fit in this marketplace?
Right.
Having this conversation with people, they don't even have to be my client, doing that equity analysis, pulling their debts into my software, just taking a snapshot of where they are, making some recommendations of how they're making those payments, ways that they can be more efficient with repaying things. You don't have to get a mortgage to get benefit out of that conversation, but I think that the longer term relationship and being in that conversation with me is really where I make a lot of money for my clients. It's in the money they don't spend on debts over time, right? So it's hard to totally quantify it.
Active equity management, right?
Active equity management.
Come on,
right.
James.
Boom.
It's in the active equity management program you have. That's perfect. And that, by the way, speaking of that, you do that. Is that an annual conversation, or like active equity management is what, an annual conversation you have?
It's an annual conversation. I try to do an annual client review. And really, I mean, I call it active equity management just to make it sound a little bit more exciting than an annual client review. But really, because everything's always changing. Everything's changing in their lives, changing in their credit, changing in their income, job. They may be starting their own business or thinking about starting a business. They may want to do a home repair.
All sorts of variables.
All sorts of variables. They may be having a first kid, third kid, sixth kid, if you're Justin Stoddard. And all these things influence the real estate needs. And so as that changes, I want to be there to help them manage that. And then help them integrate their debts with their savings plan over time. And so and it's unbelievable how the smallest little tweak, and even it might even cost the same each month, but if you're like, let's pay this off now and borrow this way over here, and it's like you're still paying the same amount every month, but then we slide the slider over 20 years into the future, you come out $100,000 ahead one way versus the other, and people don't even give it a second thought.
I feel like that's what, I mean, we've talked around it in this episode and we've talked about it in other episodes, but I feel like what makes this so unique, and I think your concept around the Equity Accelerator thing, is that your mortgage is a financial tool, and most people don't think of it that way. They think this is what I have to do to afford the kind of house I want to afford, and then I make whatever monthly payment I make. But you're coming from the place of it's a financial instrument. It's a tool, and if we use it right, we can actually position you in a way to do things in life that you've been wanting to do.
Every business you admire is leveraged a lot, and like when you think of investment bankers and mergers and acquisitions, they're all writing mortgages on companies based on their prospective income. They're more complicated types of lending, but it's interesting. Real estate, trading houses, buying and selling houses, financing and refinancing your mortgage is like, it's just like it's the simple version of the larger thing at work. And sometimes when we're doing a refinance and paying off some debts, it's like a corporate restructuring. It's like, Warren Buffett just refinanced a lot of his corporate equity. That was a big story. And it happens all the time. Nike will restructure or issue a bond to finance a special project or whatever. I mean, I just help families think in that way and execute whenever it makes sense.
I love it. That's so cool, man. Well, listen, if people want to reach out to you about your liability management, they want to have you help them manage their liabilities.
Just reach out to me. I'm licensed to lend in Oregon and Washington. I mean, our company's licensed in most states. So if you are listening in Oklahoma and Texas and you want this, please reach out to me. I'll put you in the software. I'll put you in the program and make recommendations to you. I just love to be involved in the conversation. So find me at pdxhomeloan.com. You can email me, james@pdxhomeloan.com. That's probably the easiest way. If you're a podcaster, that's the easiest way to keep it in your mind.
Yeah. Awesome. Good stuff today, James. Thank you for bringing this. I feel like this is having a show that helps us think these ways around things that we, every month we're paying our mortgage payment and we just don't think about it in a different way. So thank you for bringing the light, James, bringing the light.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. We'll
See you next time.
Okay, bye.